House, Mike Johnson, from his home state of Louisiana. Speaker, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. I know you're going to be part of a vigil tonight that is about Charlie's life, but more broadly about bringing this country back together. How do we do that?
We do that by carrying on his legacy. This has been a very difficult week in America, to say the least, Shannon. People are very saddened. They're very angry. Many people are afraid. It cast a shadow across the country and certainly on Capitol Hill. But as Erica said so well, so clearly, our friend Charlie would not want us to be consumed by despair. He would want us to carry his message forward, and that's exactly what is going to happen.
So a lot of grief, obviously, today, but fear as well, frankly. Here's what one of your colleagues, House Oversight Chair James Comer, here's what he said a couple of days ago. He says both parties have some guilt, so hopefully we can take a tragedy like this and try all to do better. And I think we can all do better, myself included. Do you get the sense there is some real soul searching on both sides of the aisle about how we got here?
I think there is. I've spoken to a lot of members on both sides of the aisle, and there's this recognition that, people have got to stop framing simple policy disagreements in terms of existential threats to our democracy and all these phrases you hear all the time. You can't call the other side fascists and enemies of the state and not understand that there are some deranged people in our society who will take that as cues to act and do crazy and dangerous things. And that's what we've seen in increasing frequency. So members of Congress and all public officials have an obligation to speak clearly into this and calm the waters. We can have vigorous disputes. I mean, Charlie Kirk was an expert at that. He loved debate. But Charlie also advanced another really important idea, and that is that he loved the people on the other side of that table. He was never motivated by hate. He was motivated by truth and love. And that's what we have to do. That's who we are as Americans. That is follows the best of our Judeo-Christian traditions and heritage and our civil society, and we have got to get back to that.
Well, you talk about Charlie and how he was in engaging with people, and yet there are a lot of folks out there who say that's the opposite of his legacy. They're portraying him as a hateful, bigoted person. I want to play something from Congresswoman Ilhan Omar speaking about him and what he was really like and what his purpose was this week.
There are a lot of people who are out there talking about him just wanting to have a civil debate.
A complete rewriting of history.
These people are full of shit, and it's important for us to call them out while we feel anger and sadness and have, empathy.
And she was referring more broadly to a lot of people on the right that she says have now resulted in her having death threats and the need for around-the-clock security, which I know you've talked about. That's not something you can do for every member. It would cost billions of dollars. But what do you make of her characterization that he really wasn't about civil debate?
She clearly has no idea what she's talking about. She has not followed Charlie. She's playing into this characterization of him that the left has been advancing. There are people actually celebrating his murder online, and that tells you everything you need to know about that side. We've got to get cut through that. Look, member security is a serious matter. We're looking into all options to increase security measures so that they have plenty of coverage for their residential security and their personal security as well. And I think we'll be able to handle that. But there is this angst out there, and we've got to turn the rhetoric down. That is exactly the opposite of what we should be doing, what you just saw in that video right there. And I hope all members of Congress will join us. Look, we've been very active in trying to carry on and really, I think, portray clearly what Charlie was about. And his record speaks for itself. He was a Christian, a committed believer. He understood what Scripture teaches, what you and I understand, Shannon, that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and spiritual darkness. And Charlie understood. He put on, as it says there in Ephesians 6, the full armor of God to go out and advance truth and do it in love. And that's exactly what he did. That's what his legacy stands for. And everyone around this country who is mourning his death understands that, in spite of what some of these voices are saying.
So there's this concern now that speech will go underground, that there'll be less of an interchange on college campuses and other places, and that people recede to these dark corners of apps and internets and communication channels. So what about that? I mean, I know your background as a constitutional law expert and attorney. I mean, how do we balance issues of free speech, of, privacy concerns in trying to get ahead of these things before they happen?
Well, you're right. I mean, for 20 years before I got elected to Congress, I was a religious liberty and free speech defense attorney. We understood we've got to advance and defend and protect the free marketplace of ideas, because vigorous debate is what made our country so great. But the key is to remember that you can disagree with someone vehemently on policy and not hate them as a person. And that's what Charlie was all about. Remember, at the end of his most vigorous debates, he was the very first person to reach out a hand of friendship, to put his arm, offer his arm around the shoulder of someone who disagreed with him vehemently, because he understood it was about the person, it's about the people, it's about the heart. And we've got to get back to that. We cannot shrink back from advancing that truth and advancing our ideas in the public square. We should double down. And I'm so encouraged by what Erica said, his dear widow, that she's going to go out and advance that herself. And that example is going to be very important for a lot of young people. I spoke at a vigil here at LSU in Baton Rouge Friday night. For many students, over 1,000 students filled the arena. It was standing room only. And they're encouraged to go forward. We're seeing that around the country. I'll be speaking at the memorial service tonight in Washington, D.C., at the Kennedy Center on Charlie's behalf. And you're going to hear everyone saying that. Don't shrink back. Go forward. Now is the time to advance truth. And I think it could be a true turning point for the country. It's so aptly named.
Do you worry that people will not want to get involved in political conversations in political office? Because, frankly, they've got to worry about themselves. They got to worry about their families, people they care about.
They do. It's a calculation that everyone makes when they step forward to serve the public. Not unlike those who serve our country in uniform, on first responders and those who serve in the military. I mean, it takes a certain element of courage. But I want to tell you that I do believe that we can turn this back. This will not be an increasing trend. And if leaders on both sides of the aisle will speak clearly about this, I think we can turn it around. I really do.
One of the tough things you're going to have to deal with politically in the next few weeks is this idea of a potential government shutdown, another divisive issue. Here's what the president said about negotiations on Friday.
If you gave them every dream, they would not vote for it. That's how bad. I told them, don't even bother dealing with them.
So how's that going to work? I mean, in the House, you've got a slim majority, which will still probably require some negotiation within the party. The Senate's a different story, much heavier lift for the majority leader, Thune, over there. Do you not negotiate? What do you do?
Well, President Trump and I talk about this all the time. We share the same frustration. Democrats currently are playing games with this government funding idea. They're trying to bring in extraneous issues. We've been working towards getting the government funding appropriations bills done in the House. Our appropriations committee's worked, by the way, in bipartisan fashion to get all 12 appropriations bills through the committee. We've got 3 of them passed off the House floor, and now we voted just last week to go into a conference committee with the Senate to begin grinding this out. That's how the process is supposed to work. So if there's any Democrats who are trying to suggest that they want to shut the government down, we're going to do everything possible to prevent that from happening. It does not behoove the country. And we may need a short gap funding measure, a CR, for a short period of time to allow the negotiation to continue. But it will be clean in its scope, and I surely hope the Democrats will not try to make this a big partisan fight.
Speaker Johnson, always great to see you. We'll see you back here in D.C. tonight. Thank you.
You got it. Thanks.